BXB. It's in the game!
Hey guys, it's me Ben, back with another one of my quick reviews, and this time I am looking at a game in a series that I have never experienced before, which is sort of incredibly surprising considering this game series has existed since 2004, debuting on the PS2, and yet here I am for the first time ever looking at Monster Hunter World, or for that matter, any Monster Hunter game. And the first thing I noticed about Monster Hunter was, oh damn, this customization suite is brilliant. On top of customizing my own character, I got to customize and create my Palico, and as you can see here, a Palico is an adorable, standing on two legs, little pet companion that looks a lot like a cat, and I love cats. I have two cats. I'm a massive fan of cats, and the fact that I have a cat that follows me around and helps me and is my best friend and heals me and does trapping of monsters and all kinds of other buffs and debuffs, it just makes me happy inside all the time. And frankly, I couldn't get enough of my Palico. I loved customizing him and putting armor on him more than I did my hot, sexy, pink-haired chick, who is the character I created for myself. But what is Monster Hunter beyond a really nice customization suite in which you can play dress up? Well, it's a game in which a bunch of people go to a sort of subcontinent/island and decide to murder all the creatures on it. Now, as someone who hasn't had a great deal of experience within the Monster Hunter universe, I was a little bit perturbed, shall we say, by the attitudes towards these quite often magnificent creatures that are just minding their own business for the most part. They're hunting each other, they're living in their habitat, you know, they're going to sleep, they're eating, they're going about their daily routines, and yet you come along and for whatever reason decide, nah, gotta murder these guys. I need their skin and their bones and their organs to make pretty armor. And that's basically the loop of Monster Hunter. And if you're not really aware of it, or if you find the animal cruelty or animal rights infractions such as this a little bit odd and a bit hard to swallow, then this may not be the game for you. But once you put aside this slightly odd sort of conceit, there's a lot of fun to be had in that central loop of the game, which is go out, hunt monster, kill monster, take bits of monster, make awesome armor, which makes you more better, which makes you more powerful, which gives you more abilities and buffs that can therefore help you fight the next monster, the next slightly bigger monster, and on and so forth, etc, etc, etc. Because one of the most important things, and one of the things you're going to be spending so much time at when you're doing this game, when you're playing this game, when you're digging through the menus, is crafting. Crafting. You will be making new armor, you will be upgrading weapons, you will be making new weapons, you will be looking at R&D tech trees, you name it, you will be doing that for hours to optimize your build, to get the best elemental effects, to, you know, improve the effects against specific monsters, because once again, this game is all about that loop. Now that, some people will say, is a bit slight. There aren't a lot of narrative reasons to be doing much in Monster Hunter. The story and the narrative, for that matter, and the characters are thin at best. But that's not what brings you to this game, and it's certainly not what holds your attention. Now, the game has a slightly Dark Souls-esque vibe, where the combat is quite sort of difficult and demanding. You have to really learn your weapons, of which there are approximately 14 archetypes, none of which are explained. The tutorialization in this game is pretty poor, though I've been told it's better than just about every one of the previous installments, which boggles the mind a little. I definitely had fun trying out the different weapons and really finding one that worked for me. I predominantly used the light bowgun because I like to be able to keep back a bit, and I found that many people didn't play that ranged character class, so I found I kind of fit in nicely in multiplayer with others and my friends and stuff, and therefore I'm actually sort of an element to the team that works quite nicely. I can have different ammo types and stuff like that, though I'm never getting to use the whetstone. So I'm going out there, I'm fighting, I'm killing monsters. I'm doing this for various reasons, I suppose. It can be bounties, it can be investigations, it can be finding and opening up new environments, it can even be for the very threadbare story reasons. But that's, once again, not really what we're talking about here. The game, I think, looks nice. The character design and the sort of art direction is good, though I think the performance visually on the Xbox One X is somewhat lacking because of the HDR not working quite right, and on the S the performance just wasn't great in general, with frame rate problems abounding throughout the game. But you know, it's still fun. the funny thing with this game, at times I thought to myself, this is an amazing game. Then I thought this is a great game. A good game. An okay game. God, I don't like this game. And I really went through a gamut of emotions when playing this, when it comes to my actual thoughts on the game. It was very difficult for me to come and sit down and do this review, because while the combat is quite cool and fun, and actually while fairly demanding, it's actually kind of accessible in a strange way, because while there are lots of different weapon types, the actual combat is actually kind of simple. I mean, it's mostly one or two buttons or a combination of the two. It's more about learning what your build of your character is good at and playing to its strengths and trying to mitigate its weaknesses. So there's a lot of systems at play here, and they are brilliantly sort of shown to the player through menu upon sub-menu upon the menu of the sub-menu's menu, of which very little is explained, or if it is explained, it's explained very early on through walls of text, not through doing. This seems to be the nature of Monster Hunter's tutorials, just things to read, and frankly, who does that and who wants to do that? Because I certainly don't. But once you get the hang of things and you start to spend some time in this game like I've done, of which I've spent many hours, I couldn't ever possibly argue that I finished this game, because once you beat the story and once you get through the narrative, that's when the game really begins. That's when the high level content's unlocked. That's when it becomes important for you to specify your character class and play with 3 other people. That's when it becomes integral that you really communicate, work out your strengths and weaknesses to take on those high level challenges. So I mentioned earlier that the visuals weren't great, the art direction is nice, the level design is impressive, the open areas, it's not an open world, the open areas you go in are very varied and surprisingly vertical in their design. They're not just stretched out large horizontal planes of content, they have a lot of depth to them. They have caverns and tunnels, and then they have all the up into the trees and the rafters of an area as you're climbing around beautiful forests and looking at all the foliage. You'll be picking up many things in Monster Hunter, investigating many things, but really everything is just there to facilitate the real crux of this game, which is what I've mentioned once and I'll mention again. I've mentioned many times already. You are here to kill monsters so you can take their shit and get nice clothes off the back of it. And what that does, it does well. I mean, it's incredibly Japanese. Everything about this has a certain whimsical, weird charm to it, I suppose. None of it makes a great deal of sense why you're there murdering these monsters, but the actual loop is fun to do, and I can't ignore that when I come to my conclusions here. Because while I found perhaps the premise a little bit distasteful, the worlds, well, pretty, not necessarily the most impressive we've seen, and the combat engaging and deep but also accessible, I didn't always love what I was doing. I didn't feel that there was enough reasons for me to be out there murdering these creatures, which are varied and amazing, and the design of them is just fantastic. And I feel like I want to spend more time with this game, but I can't sit on it forever. I've already sat on it for a long time and played a lot of it, and I need to bring this to a conclusion, give you guys my review. So I think Monster Hunter is probably the best example of a Monster Hunter game yet, Monster Hunter World. However, it might not be the action role-playing game you want to play if you're sort of specifically in love with the Western style of RPG. It really isn't that. It kind of is closest to something like Dark Souls, and yet even then isn't that similar. It's very much its own subgenre. And I think this is the one to give a go. If you're ever going to try Monster Hunter, Monster Hunter World is the one to try it with. However, for a game that is predicated on multiplayer, man, it could be a lot easier to actually get into a game with your friends. So because of all this, I'm going to have to play it right down the middle and give Monster Hunter World 3 out of 5 stars.
BXB. It's in the game.